From TSN, it's time to go talk to our man, Farhan Lalji. There he is. Joining us. First off, I tweeted at you yesterday, and I don't usually do that. It was more of a tongue-in-cheek. It was a smart aleck comment on I can't stand when players dance after they drop a ball or they do something detrimental to their team, and then 5 minutes later they're doing a celebration dance in the end zone.
Yeah, look, I always think you should celebrate. When you score, I'm not a act like you've been there before kind of guy. Like, not over the top. Just you can celebrate. These things are hard to do. Everything's great, but the thought that this was any level of redemption is fantasy. There was no redemption there because he was wide open. It was an easy catch, and you scored. Good for you. You got to make the other play. That doesn't change the fact. Like, this wasn't one of those Nick Dembski crazy grabs, right? Which is, you're fortunate to make. Like, he made a regular play to score a touchdown. He dropped a regular play. You can't have that. So celebrate whatever. But there was, like, to me, look, if I drop the ball, I'm kind of with you on this one. If I drop the ball, the next time I score, I'm still going to be sheepish.
We're talking about, for people, that Julian Grant last night for the Eskimos for the Elks, sorry, dropped one in the end zone that I said a lot of bantam players would have had, and then 5 minutes later he caught a pedestrian one and then did the celly. It looks like we got a battle of the backups tomorrow. Is that safe to say here in Regina?
Yeah, I think the Lions are offering up a little gamesmanship here and holding out a final decision until the end. Good of the Riders not to do the same after Trevor Harris practiced in a closed practice yesterday and apparently was a full participant. And I kind of raised my eyebrows a bit when Corey May said, "I'm going to go see the film because I'm not sure what you gain on film from a concussion," right? So that part was a little odd. That said, the Riders are being cautious here and are making sure they do the right thing by the player, and they are going to sit Trevor Harris out. And, I know that was very much up in the air. The stuff with Nathan Rourke, they've got him listed atop the depth chart, but they've got game time decision. He didn't practice at all yesterday. So kind of the opposite situation of Trevor Harris. Rourke did practice the first 2 days, a little bit limited, didn't practice the third day, and now they've got him as a game time decision. My gut tells me he's not going to play, but I really do think this is a bit of a moving target here, and there is a chance, but based on their quarterback deployment in practice yesterday and all those other things, my gut tells me like 60-40 that Rourke's not going to start.
Have you seen him throw the ball?
Yeah.
You have, and like, how does it really look?
Well, okay, so he did some stuff, with a trainer before the practice week began, where he was really ripping it, like really putting a lot of strain and torque on that area, and wasn't really pushing the ball down the field in the couple of clips that I saw. It was all very short, but he looked fine. And then the two practices on the Tuesday, he took half the reps. Masoli took half the reps, and the reps that Nathan took, everything was within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage. Wednesday, similar, but he did push the ball a bit more. So I think we all expected, and Buck Pierce admitted to this at the start of the week, the expectation was he would progress and add throughout the week. So it was a big surprise that he didn't do anything yesterday. Did some work on the side, but in terms of actual team reps, zero. Now, when he was in, he looked fine, but again, wasn't really testing himself. So, was this a case of, they tell me it wasn't a setback, okay? So you believe them. Is there a case of he just wasn't feeling right after a few workouts? Or is there a case of maybe he said to them, look, you've shown us what we need to see. Let's just take Thursday off, Friday off, and you'll be even that much better for Saturday. Never know. But I just don't think that's how they're wired on the preparation side to do all of this and then still have him play.
After last week's game against Winnipeg, where Jeremiah Masoli was in, I watched bits and pieces of it. What do they have to do better? How do you think they will attack or try to attack the Riders if Masoli's in to try and get this win at Mosaic Stadium?
It's a good question because, the bottom line is don't turn the ball over, right? And that's what Masoli did 3 times. Like, don't turn the ball over. So it's not necessarily how you're going to attack the Riders. I think this Rider team has given up some passing yards, right? Like, I do think they need to tighten up in that area. They've generated some sacks. They've been good defensively against the run. But, they've given up 22 first downs per game. So even a quarterback like Nick Arbuckle has been able to functionally move the ball, and some backups that they faced have been able to functionally move the ball. So I do think you can throw the ball on this team. So, we'll see. They're not the Winnipeg style where you keep everything in front of you. They do play some man and do some different things. So, can you find some matchups and push the ball? I don't know, but for Masoli, just be efficient and don't turn it over. That's really what they need right now.
What's impressed you about the Riders so far after 3?
Trevor Harris, as always, but he's not going to be playing in this game. But, I think the way they've navigated their injuries, quite honestly. AJ Ouellette has been good since Kadeem Carey got added, right? And defensively, or offensively, you lose Kean Schaefer-Baker and you lose a Sam Emelis, and they've got a couple of these young guys that have managed to step up and do some really good things in the receiving corps. So I really like how they've been able to continue to move the ball. Mark Mueller and Harris have been doing a really good job of just kind of taking advantage of matchups and what they have to get the ball down the field. And again, defensively, this was a team that maybe didn't pressure the passer a ton, but secondary-wise, they were so good. It's been a little bit of the opposite this time around. They are getting some pressure, but they're not necessarily airtight in the secondary yet. But they're, they just find ways, right? I mean, whether it's Mario Alford taking off and scoring a touchdown on a return to end the game, they just find ways. Corey Mace has instilled that belief in this group.
Dante Myers, right? Game last week, unbelievable. And
yeah.
Mitch Picton's look good. Maybe it's Joe Robicelli's. Who knows this week? You talked about injuries there, and Sharky and I yesterday were on the show, and we're kind of going through. I don't know in depth enough every team's injuries where they land. He said Saskatchewan's a little bit above half. There's some teams that are worse off. Injury front for the Lions. What can you tell kind of the casual fans? Where are they maybe a little beat up? Maybe where are they susceptible besides quarterback?
Well, the biggest change for them is Dejon Allen at right tackle, right? He's not going to be playing. Not sure if they're going to get him back. So that's a big loss for them. He was their big free agent acquisition this offseason, kind of like what Saskatchewan did with Jamarcus Hardrick, and you lose him early in the year, and it changes the complexion of how your team is built. So that's a big loss. Chris Schlugger, who's generally been a guard when he's been in for this team, moves over to the right tackle spot. So we'll see what that looks like. Defensively, they don't have Jonah Tavai, who's been pretty good for them this year, at the nose, right? He's been able to get some upfield push. He's a short, squat player, kind of like Stove Richardson in Winnipeg back in the day, and he's been really quick. They don't have him, so Marcus Moore gets back into the lineup for the first time this season. So injury-wise, I think those are the big things. They're still trying to get Josh Woods back. He's been kind of week to week, and I know he's getting closer. Tweaked a hamstring this week after being a full participant in day one. When he eventually gets back, this guy's one of the best linebackers in the CFL for my money, and that's going to really, really improve their front six, but they haven't had him all year, and they won't have him again on Saturday.
Around the league, Winnipeg wins last night. We talked about that off the hop. Elks were hanging in there for a bit. I thought maybe my little sprinkle on something crazy to happen, but it wasn't the case. Winnipeg looks really good. If you were kind of power ranking teams around the league right now, would Winnipeg be the top team? What are you seeing?
Montreal's the top team for me.
Montreal,
I think they're the deepest on both sides of the ball. Davis Alexander's a stud. I know he's hurt, not playing this week. It's McLeod, but pretty good backup too, right? So they've got depth and talent and speed and physicality at the receiving spots. They're so good defensively. The run game, when you make a decision to move on from Walter Fletcher, what are you going to get consistently there? But when Alexander plays, they're just so dynamic. And I would put Winnipeg 2 and Saskatchewan 3, right? And I think Winnipeg has got a ceiling, and we saw a bit of that ceiling yesterday. I debated this with Naylor earlier in the week about Winnipeg or Saskatchewan as the class of the West. And I like what Saskatchewan's doing. I just think, Winnipeg won their first 2 games, and Zach Collaros hadn't hit a stride yet. Nick Dembski hadn't hit a stride yet. Dalton Schoen hadn't hit a stride yet. They don't have Brady Oliveira back yet. Well, some of those pieces started to hit their stride last night. And even though we got the best performance from Trey Ford we've had this year, it wasn't enough because Winnipeg does what they do, especially in the fourth quarter when they've got a lead. They just run the ball down your throat, right? So they just find ways. So I just think that their defense is better than I thought it would be. I mean, it was good late last year, but I just, we all thought they'd take a step back, and they haven't. I just think their D is so good. So I just think their ceiling to this point is a little higher than Saskatchewan's, but it's really, really close. And those 3 teams, Montreal, Saskatchewan, and Winnipeg, are the clear top 3 in the league.
And I think Montreal's the sneaky home field advantage a lot there, right? Like a lot of people don't talk
Yeah.
about. They don't lose a lot of games at that, and they get good crowds for what the
And
stadium is.
Saskatchewan, quite frankly, is not as good, right? Like it used to be a tough place to play.
I
Crowds
know.
haven't been good enough in Saskatchewan. Winnipeg is the Cadillac. Like every time you go there, it's a sellout, and it's become a thing, and everybody wants to go. And so I heard before, oh, they don't want to come in Saskatchewan on a Thursday. It's Saturday. It's early. Show up.
There, I think Coach Mace and the players will echo that as well. Trey Ford, you mentioned he had statistically wise, a nice night last night. I don't know. I watched the football game again just as a fan of the game, and it's not 1980 where Tracy Ham can rip around, and like the athletes are so good nowadays. Like the guys, can he stand in the pocket and sling it? He's very athletic, but there was times yesterday, Farhan, he took off, started running. I was worried that he's going to get really hurt.
Yeah, and that is a fair concern with Trey because injuries have been part of his story, and it's probably been an underplayed part of his story. People just talk about the Canadian quarterback and the U Sports quarterback, and is he going to get a chance? All this stuff, but injuries have been part of that conversation. And look, I saw some good things from Trey yesterday, in that there were throws he was able to stand in the pocket and drive mid-level throws. Right, like fade balls are easy. They're very forgiving. Right, not a lot bad happens there. You get a pick, okay, it's like a punt. But can you drive those intermediate throws? And he was doing some of that, which he hadn't necessarily done in the first couple of games. But he's still too quick to escape from the pocket. Now, he only had one downfield carry for just 6 yards in the last game. But to your point, there were times he was just running around trying to keep plays alive. And there were some hope bets there. So I do think he's got to hang in there a little bit longer consistently. Now, you don't want to take away what his secret power is. But at the same time, he can't just win the game that way. Like it hasn't proven to be successful thus far, and it'll continue to not be successful consistently if he does that. Yeah, he's going to flash. So I think the big thing is it's not about just taking off and running down the field. He just wants to extend earlier than he needs to. He's got to hang in a bit longer.
Let's shift to hockey here. Evander Kane in the fold in Vancouver. That one catch you by surprise?
Yes and no. No, because the Canucks are desperate, right? This is not a destination franchise. As spectacular a city as Vancouver is, this franchise last year seen around the league by players and agents as one that was filled with dysfunction in the locker room, that eventually saw the coach step down. You don't know where it's headed. So they're not going to be at the top of anybody's free agent list, regardless of tax situation. So they've got to make some hope bets. And that means, reclamation projects, guys that are kind of, at a low ebb in terms of value, right? And they were lucky that Evander Kane wanted to come here. There were three other teams that were interested. I think on the surface, you look at that deal and think, wow, the Canucks just gave the Oilers a get-out-of-jail-free card on the salary cap, and they should have been able to get Edmonton to retain. But if there were three legitimate suitors elsewhere, that becomes difficult to do. So everyone in Vancouver, look, he's one of those players. Jake Virtanen was similar. When you're from here, everybody watches you forever. Right? Like if you do something wrong, everybody in Vancouver is going to know, and they're paying attention whether you play for this team or not. So the trials and tribulations of Evander Kane are not lost on anyone here in Vancouver, and the majority of fans in Vancouver didn't want Evander Kane back. But I do think with 1 year left on his contract and Evander Kane wanting to get another contract, the Canucks will probably get the best out of Evander Kane on the ice and from his behavior off it.
I think if the Canucks want to double down and give the Oilers a get out of jail free card, they can pick up Nurse too, because it sounds like that he could. And then last thing,
huh?
Yeah, last thing for you. I saw the story today. Do you think they actually will use Demko as maybe trade bait?
I think they should consider it, right? I mean, they've got three goaltenders now. Archer Shilovs, who wasn't good when he was in Vancouver last year, just won the Calder Cup MVP with Vancouver winning the title there. And next year, he's got to clear waivers to be sent back down. So I think he's part of the Canuck conversation again. And if you can clear out Demko and get some value from a team that thinks that he can stay healthy, kind of like the Evander Kane situation, right? Like it's a low-cost bet, but the Canucks aren't going to want a fourth-round pick back like they gave up for Kane. They're going to want a meaningful asset, and I don't know if it'll be just enough to clear the salary. But I think it's in the conversation for sure.
Will be interesting. All right. Next week, you got the Professor, Don Hewitt. He'll be stepping in. So, yeah, you guys will have a good chat. Have a great weekend, and we'll see what happens in the game. Obviously, go Riders.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun on Saturday. Can't wait.
Right on.